Hi everyone, for my final project I looked at finding potential honeybee sanctuary locations in an agriculturally dense area. The purpose of this project was to determine potential areas that could be dedicated for honeybee sanctuaries using ArcGIS techniques and analysis. The study area was chosen to be in a highly dense agricultural area of Newfane and Wilson, New York, located in Niagara County. Niagara County is located all the way in western New York, just on the border of New York and Canada. Both Newfane and Wilson, New York contain some of the most agricultural plots of land in the whole state. They provide acres and acres and acres of stone fruit trees. They're actually really big on cabbage too. They provide a lot of food sources for New York as well as other areas in the country. The analysis was centered around the core needs for a honeybee hive to strive. These core needs are food, water, and protection. Furthermore, they require pollen and nectar, which is generally supplied by trees and shrubs, as well as herbaceous plants such as clover. Some of the most common nectar sources for honeybees are clovers, berries, dandelions, goldenrods, maples, mustards, ragweeds. In addition, honeybees require a source of water within half a mile of their hive. And most importantly, a successful honeybee hive needs their food and water sources protected from most pesticides and insecticides, which can be a challenge in an agriculturally dense area. But ironically, honeybees are needed most in an agriculturally dense area. So that's why it's important to have these honeybee sanctuaries that are surrounded by agriculture. So hopefully there could be some kind of chi between the two. So first, just a little introduction of what is a bee's purpose. A honeybee's purpose basically is to pollinate, and pollination helps for our trees to flourish, our fruits and vegetables to grow. Without these honeybees, doing what they do best, pollinating and creating honey, we wouldn't be able to have trees and food sources. More importantly, it's critical to kind of have honeybee sanctuaries because over the last several years there has been an incredible decline in honeybee colonies across the globe. And one of the leading contributors to honeybee loss is colony collapse disorder. And colony collapse disorder, can be attributed to so many different things. It could be lack of nutrients, increase in pressure from the environment, bacteria, pesticides, and a lot of these things are kind of an onset of climate change. So climate change can bring in so many different things. They can bring in more invasive species. With the increase in invasive species comes the increased use in pesticides. There could be wacky, crazy weather. So colony collapse is one of the leading causes of mortality rates for honeybees. I'm actually a beekeeper myself, just like a small-time beekeeper, but our hive didn't last throughout the winter last year because there potentially was like a false spring, so it got pretty warm, in February, so the bees left the hive, and then it got super cold, next couple of days later, and the hive didn't make it. So there's this website called research.beeinformation.org that has a fantastic interactive map for the whole country that shows kind of what the colony loss has been for 2018 and 2019. You could go through it the whole days. In my story map, there's a link to it, so if you want to explore it, it's a great tool to use to kind of really see the impact that the loss of honeybees have been having. And then lastly, just to emphasize even more, there is such a need for honeybees. Honeybees are just so important to every aspect of our life, so it's critical that we do have these honeybee sanctuaries and are proactive to make sure that honeybees do not go extinct, that these issues that are causing colony collapse can be rectified, and somehow we can keep the bee populations going. So my main research question was, in an area that is dense with agriculture, is there room to dedicate land to serve as a sanctuary for honeybees? And my study area of Newfane and Wilson, New York, as I mentioned, is a pretty agricultural dense area. It's also very rural, so there's possibly some room where there's just vacant land that, no one's building on, no one's doing anything with, that could possibly then be dedicated protected land for honeybees. So in order to determine if there are any areas within Newfane and Wilson, New York, the first method that I wanted to do was a viewshed analysis. So I wanted to incorporate a viewshed analysis mostly to kind of give a buffer to the area that I'm going to be saying is suitable and what's not suitable. So my viewshed analysis, I used agricultural boundaries, which was from the New York State Clearinghouse GIS data source. And the agricultural district boundaries is based off of tax parcels. And then from those tax parcels, I basically queried out any ones that seem to be highly dense in pesticides. So if it was like a livestock agricultural property, I didn't include it. So within the tax parcel data, there's a prop class code, which basically says what kind of land that is. So I used the parcels that were coded with 120, 150, and 152, and those were considered to be field crops, orchard crops, and vineyards. So I exported all those parcels out that were dedicated to be, that's what that property is doing. And I wanted to do that because those properties, I mean, there might not be, who knows, there could not actually be productive agriculture on there, but I wanted to have those parcels act as a buffer, just in case there is pesticide drift that could potentially, harm a honeybee's food source or a honeybee's, water supply. So first I got my parcels, and my parcels are going to be acting as the observation points for my viewshed analysis. Since the parcels were polygons, I had to convert it to polylines in order to run the viewshed analysis. The other component to the viewshed analysis that I needed was a DEM. The DEM shows the elevation, so between the parcels acting as the observation points and the DEM showing what the elevation is, I was able to run the viewshed analysis tool to show what areas would be visible from these parcels. And those areas that were considered to be visible from those parcels, I decided to make sure that I erase that from any potential suitable areas, because I want the areas that are visible to act as a buffer in case there is pesticide drift. And pesticide drift, some areas reported that it could be 20 meters, it all depended on how fast the wind is, but I wanted to add that buffer just to make sure that the honeybee's food source and water supply would not have any potential pesticide residue on it. So then the next analysis that I ran was a suitable habitat analysis. This went off those core ideas that I stated in the beginning of that a honeybee needs food, water, and it needs to be away from any potential pesticide exposure. So the first thing I did was I used those agricultural district property boundaries. Oh, I'm sorry. The first thing I did was I used a land cover data set, and I reclassified the land cover data set for areas that were classified as deciduous forest, evergreen forest, mixed forest, shrubs, herbaceous, hay pasture, cultivated crops, woody wetlands. All these things I considered them to be a suitable land, and then anything else I showed it as unsuitable. And I reclassified that and exported it to be this map that you see here. So a lot of area was shown to be suitable. But again, this is a very rural area, so it doesn't surprise me that most of the area is probably suitable because most of it's mostly agriculture. So because most of the area is agricultural, I took those agricultural districts boundaries and I erased them from the suitable areas so that they were not not added. So what you see here is the agricultural district, so I'm going to be erasing that from this suitable area, so I don't even want to consider these agricultural districts. This resulted in these areas that you see here, but before I got to these areas, I also wanted to make sure that the suitable areas were within half a mile from a water source, because honeybees need water in order to thrive. So I created a buffer around the streams and hydrology polygon layers, and I clipped all the suitable areas that were outside the agricultural boundaries but also considered suitable, and I ended up with this red area here to show the suitable areas. So then lastly, I had to then subtract out that what I got from my viewshed analysis. I would also want to erase out all of this visible area from those potential suitable habitat area to kind of take into account that last idea that pesticide exposure, honeybees need an area that protects them from pesticide exposure. So the area that you see in red has all those criteria is kind of exported out. So once I had this suitable areas, I need to see if there was any parcels that were in there that weren't, residential, that weren't already taken care of. And from that, it resulted in 12 parcels that could potentially be of honeybee sanctuaries. And you can explore the map in my results area a little bit to get a little bit better understanding of like what kind of information these parcels have. Like this parcel that's 6.88 acres gives you the address of it. It gives you all the information, so even then you could go and see a little bit more, if those areas would actually be potentially suitable honeybee habitats. So my results for my analysis is, yes, there are potentially some parcels of land that could be converted into honeybee sanctuaries within Newfane and Niagara County, New York. But after I did all this, there kind of needs to be another step in the study, I think, and that's what I go over in my discussion is, I think the map data is great, but sometimes the parcel data could be outdated. How accurate is that parcel data? Because the core of my whole analysis of everything I used was parcel data and what that parcel data has been classified as, and also what the land use data has been classified as. So really the next step in this would be to do a field visit, to create a field survey and see what the land is actually like, to see if the land is actually suitable, to see how far is there actually agriculture around it that could, potentially be of harm to this honeybee sanctuary. And then furthermore, if those are, like, what are the legal ways that you can create a protected area? Like, I'm sure in New York State we have the DEC, I'm sure you would have to go through them. So that is my project. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing everyone else's project. Thank you.